The late John Peel. It's diggers, tractors and trucks.
Children love diggers. These 20th century dinosaurs with teeth of steel tearing into the earth have an irresistible attraction. Most of us grow up to forget this first true love, but for some, digging machines remain a lifelong obsession.
I've always been interested in excavating and the machinery involved in it from an early age, 5, 4, something like that. The first book I read at school was Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. Makes an impression at an early age, I think.
Ian Hartland spends most of his life lovingly tending the digging machines that others have condemned to the scrap heap. This 10RB is the most successful small excavator ever made. Ruston Bucyrus built 7,500 of them.
It does have electric starting, but it's rather a good starter, so it's as handy to do it with the handle. Quality of the materials in the Ruston Bucyrus excavator is somewhat superior to a lot of its competitors. The basic design was good to start with, and throughout the production, the 10RB didn't alter from 1934 to 1967 when they produced the last one.
More than 50 years on, the rugged 10RB still works in the furthest reaches of the old empire.
That's the steering it with. About 7 turns one way to go left and 7 turns the other way to go right. It's just a matter of remembering which way you turned it last time when you want to steer. It's difficult when you're not driving it regularly. When it's flat out in normal travel, it does 2/3 of a mile an hour, which is about what we're doing now. But we can't go into high-speed propel. And then we'll do 1.5 miles an hour. Seems very fast.
The machine is always referred to as a navvy. It's a term which is sort of dying out now. You'll still find it around quarries and on open cast, but it's a term which has sort of disappeared from the construction industry. The origins of that go back a long way to the construction of the canals. The canals were known as the inland navigation system, and the Irish labourers that dug them were known as navigators. Shortened to navvies, a steam excavator was built, Ruston and Dunbar in this country, and naturally became known as a steam navvy, and the term has stuck to them ever since.
The steam navvy replaced armies of men with picks and shovels. The basic design, with its ropes, winches and bucket on a boom, remained the same for over 100 years. This 300-ton monster with a 10-ton bite is being tested outside Ruston's Lincoln Works before being exported to dig canals in India. In 1930, the American excavator giant Bucyrus Erie formed a partnership with Ruston's. The result was Ruston Bucyrus, a name that made the city of Lincoln the excavator world capital.
To drive the old type of navvy, it's no good putting a wiggling on because it wouldn't last 2 minutes. I mean, years ago they used to have a lot of Irish lads on that were very, very strong boys, like. And of course I was among them, like, you know. We used to get up about 6 o'clock. It was a 12-hour shift, 7 till 7. It was a fairly long day. We used to call Friday half a day, it was 5 o'clock on a Friday. And then Saturday was 8 till 12. 22 was one of the best machines that Ruston's turned out. 22 RB was. It was very fast. Well, on a good day, a good man on his job, if he kept going on really good pull, he could shift 1,000 ton a day, 12 hours.
If the navvy men were tough, their machines had to be tougher still. The 19 and 22 RB were a couple of the most resilient excavators ever built. Their strength came from the Anglo-American combination of Ruston's superb engines with Bucyrus's rugged designs. RB excavators could go on forever, but their drivers needed a break.
Most quarries matched their excavator bucket size to the jaw size of their primary crusher. So theoretically, what would pass through the excavator bucket, the crusher could cope with. But very often, when the drivers are ready for a break, they would sometimes put a rather larger lump of rock out, tipple that into the dumper, which would then go into the crusher and block it, so they could all stop for a fag break, and frowned upon by management, no doubt, but it's the sort of thing that happens.
In 1939, Hitler put an end to fag breaks. Navvies and their drivers rolled up their sleeves and dug for victory.
Beneath Great Britain's soil lie iron, limestone, clay, tin, and many other of the minerals and ores she needs for her great industry. Today, her workers are bringing millions of tons of these ores to the surface, with which to make guns and tanks, shells and ships, vast new munition factories. These excavators with their teeth of steel move powerfully behind Britain's war effort.
Excavators were making a heroic effort on the home front, but the Allies were in deep trouble. Hitler had massed his forces behind the impenetrable Siegfried Line and looked invincible. It was Churchill's fear of another war deadlocked in the trenches that inspired him with a madcap idea. Churchill wanted to dig his way through the Siegfried Line with a cavalry charge of giant excavators. The top secret excavator would be called Nellie, and she'd be designed by a Mr. Spanner from the Admiralty.
They wouldn't waste a competent man on such a harebrained idea, so they put a greenhorn out of college on it. That's what they thought.
25-year-old Frank Spanner's expertise was in battleships, but when it came to designing a giant mole, he was far from all at sea.
I spent about 5 weeks seeing what I could do. I finally got something that looked possible. It looked like a huge tank with a plow on the front.
We're gonna hang out watching on the Siegfried Line. Have you any dirty washing, mother?
The engineering reputation of Ruston Bucyrus won them the contract to build this secret digging machine. It was a daunting task, for Nellie was a giant among moles. She weighed 130 tons, measured 75 foot, and carried 575 gallons of fuel, enough to keep her burrowing for 10 hours.
Mr. Churchill came to see the pilot machine, and I shook hands with him. The machine went down into the ground as forecast, and then It completely went through a minefield, the plough just simply turning up the mines and pushing them to left and right. And it completely went through a barbed wire entanglement without any trouble at all. I was pleased with it, but I knew it wouldn't do the speed Mr. Churchill wanted. He wanted 4 miles an hour. That was out of the question. But it would do half a mile and possibly 1 mile an hour.
The Second World War didn't get bogged down in the trenches, and Nellie was never used. Churchill had originally ordered 200 machines, but only 5 were built. In the end, they were all cut up for scrap by German prisoners of war. This is the modern yellow and red world of Joe Cyril Bamford, Mr. JCB. In the swinging 60s, JCB buried the old navvy forever with the hydraulic ram.
£500 complete with all the pipes on it. No, you have to come and collect it. Special deal for you, 100% down, no more to pay for 6 months.
Jeff Warburton salvages old JCB machines. Somebody always wants a second-hand part for their digger. After the success of its tractor-based excavators in the 1950s, JCB broke into the navvy market with a machine for the future, the JCB-7.
Well, this was the first hydraulic excavator that JCB built. It was their starting point into the world of hydraulically powered excavators on tracks. It was like a whole sea change, really, because this machine can push down to dig. It's got hydraulic power and it can push and penetrate. You can cut through concrete maybe 3-4 inches thick, tarmac, it rips straight through it, because you've got 3 actions. You've got the boom ram that you can push down, the dipper arm which can pull, and the bucket ram here which gives you a crowding action. So you've got 3 powers there, a bit like your arm, like that, and you can hook under. On the tooth here, you can get something like 7-8 tons of digging power. So you can imagine how much damage you can do. JCB never lost sight of keeping the operator happy, giving him a good environment in the cab, so it's watertight, keep him dry, keep him warm, lights on it to work in the winter, somewhere that's look forward to coming to work in. If the operator was happy, he would then, when the machine was to be changed, would ask possibly again for another JCB. If you're digging in, say, clay or sticky material, because of the double action of a hydraulic ram, you could flick it out and shake it, whereas with a drag line, you couldn't actually shake the material out. If it stuck in, that was it. You had to put it back on the floor and get a spade and dig it out. For the money, it's as good as you're going to get, really. You could pay twice the price for the same type of machine, but you don't really get twice as much value. It's a bread and butter machine. It'll do 90% of what you ask for. Why buy a Rolls Royce when Ford will do the job?
But the cosseting environment of a JCB cab wasn't to everyone's taste. Priestmans of Hull stuck to their navvy roots and built machines based on this 1943 Cub until the late 60s. Philip Peacock was one of the few who stayed loyal to Priestmans.
You climb in a modern machine, you push a lever ½ an inch, that does the job it's made for. You jump in this machine, you've actually got to work at driving it. It's a bit of a work of art, perhaps is the best way of describing it. Your new modern excavators are very easy to drive. These take a bit of practice and a lot of skill, which gave, in the old days, gave the operators quite a good status wherever they worked. At the ends of your fingers, you have got a killing machine, and you deserve respect for the fact that you can operate it safely and properly. Even a small little machine like this can do a lot of damage. You got a bit warmed up.
The Priestman Cob was no match for hydraulic machines. But in Britain's open cast mines, the old dragline technology lived on. Rigged in exactly the same way as the Cob, but on a much bigger scale, these machines rip out the earth to expose precious seams of coal. Their great bulk means that they must move in a unique way.
The walking dragline excavator is a remarkable engineering achievement. 1,000 tons of steel structure that walks, carrying a complete electrical generating plant. It can move along the edge of the pit it is working at a rate of 1/4 mile an hour. The floats at the side propel it along like feet, and the huge base has a heel and toe movement to prevent suction.
This 1150B arrived second-hand from America in 1954. It was the largest walking dragline Britain had ever seen, and it worked for over 40 years. Johnny Lashmar and Roy Lee were kings among excavator drivers. The 1150B was forced to retire 10 years ago and hasn't walked since.
Nowhere on them, eh?
I remember when I first came in here, it looked massive.
That'd be nice to fire it up again, wouldn't it?
Oh, you're young enough to do it. We used to do 20,000 cubic yards of muck a day with it. Sometimes you do more, sometimes a bit less. It depends how hard the digging is. You have to be careful when it's very hard because you're liable to break something. A lot of hard rock here there was. When you get down to the coal, you know you're there because it's black. No, I forgot what they call these things. These are special
Excitation motors, these, were foot levers.
For the excitation of it.
Yeah. Getting a bit worse for wear now, they're getting a bit...
Oh, it'll last for years. It'll last for years, that will.
Yeah. This machine, it's a 24-hour operation. Started up on a Monday morning at 6 o'clock and worked through the week, right up to Saturday dinner time at 12 o'clock. And it's very impressive when it's working, the bucket going in and out and swinging around, you know. You can really appreciate size on it and what it takes to operate it. And driving a machine like this is just about the top spot you can get. It's like a big digging factory, if you like, once you get inside. This is the one.
That's a tappet spanner.
Yep. This is one of the smaller ones.
Like all large walking draglines, the 1150B was powered by electricity. This cable, which plugged straight into the national grid, occasionally got squashed by a 27-ton foot. Operating 1,150 tons of excavator was not a job for the faint-hearted.
Come in, Roy. Get yourself sat down here.
This brings back memories, John. Yeah. Oh, my neck. Just like first time when I sat in here, I can remember trembling. These are buttons that stop it. Aren't they? Never mind them at start.
I didn't want another one that started it.
First day, my hands were just white, weren't they? My hands, I couldn't dare let go of these levers.
When you first get on, it's a funny sensation.
It is that, because you realise that there's only you controlling that big bucket in there.
That's right, you're in charge of it.
You can do a lot of damage. You're captain of the ship, aren't you? Is it safe to go past? For dragging bucket in, you've got to feel it into muck as well, you know. If you get any hard bits, you could be breaking something if you pulled it in too hard. That's my idea. There were always a cup of tea on here, I think, weren't they? Yours were 3 times bigger than that one.
It was...
Had a lifebelt tongue on side.
They had more tea bags.
As you fell in.
Shifted a lot of muck. And then a few bob, didn't we?
Yeah.
But it wasn't pounds.
Oh, that's right.
But we didn't do so bad.
The Ace of Spades is the great-grandson of the 1150B. With its 110-ton bucket load, the Ace is the largest walking dragline in Western Europe.
You've got to get the overburden from point A to point B. And if you have room to work this dragline, that's more economical than running 4 shovels and 12 trucks. This will move it in one. Moves it out of the pit onto the spoil heap in one action. It's got to do 1 cycle a minute, or 46 seconds is what we aim for. And that's about the target all the time. If you don't move that amount of material, it becomes uneconomical. In the UK, I think at the moment we have a lot of gas and a lot of other things that makes electricity, and there's not the demand for coal. So there is probably never going to be another big dragline boat into the UK.
The 4,000-ton Ace of Spades cost £15 million to build. Time is money, and the Ace works around the clock, stopping only for crucial maintenance.
About a 65 cubic yard bucket, this. To replace one of these would cost you about £200,000, but it has to be manufactured. You can't buy one of these buckets from the shelf. You couldn't go to Presto's and buy a new bucket for your dragline. Stays on here about 6 months, barring disasters. The profile of this tooth is quite new. That's a newish profile. That piece will disappear to about that angle. You've lost about 4 inches from the end. It's no longer economical to use that tooth when it gets to that stage, so we take that off. The life of these is about 1 week. This is the shackle that links the drag chain onto your bucket. And then we have the pair link. This is a pear-shaped link. We have a bar in here, which is cast into the link, which stops this link being jammed up in here. You'd be amazed how a 6-inch section can break into 2 pieces. You might think it belongs to RJB mining, but it doesn't. It belongs to me. That's mine. That's my baby. It's a good muck shifting machine. And muck shifting is what the business is all about.
And there'll be more diggers, tractors and trucks at the same time tomorrow, with a focus on road builders. Next this afternoon, we explore the world's deepest gold mine.